Chapter 18. Punishable by Death. It had been a week since returning home from the hospital, and Mary stood staring out the kitchen window toward Kevin's shop, more concerned than ever. Never before in their time together had they spoken to each other so little, nor had such little time together. Worried about the unexplained darkened area on his CT scan, Mary wondered if it might be the reason for his behavioral change. Each free minute from working or doing homework for her doctorate degree was spent researching similar cases, but with very little results. Finally, she decided to try a different approach, and instead of letting him work through issues by spending most of his time in his shop, she would encourage him to do other things. Normally, as she approached, the large roll-up door would be open, and she had just recognized it had not been up all week. Everything that was normal to her as she walked out to his workshop was no longer normal, such as the sounds. There was always hammering, a machine running, or even music playing, only this time nothing, not even a bird chirping. Entering through the side door, Mary walked into the main part of the shop, which seemed void of life as though nobody had been there in years. Looking toward Kevin's finishing room where he spent most of his time working, Mary could see the top of his head through a window separating the two rooms. Making her way through the shop, she slowly opened the door to not startle him, and entered. Sitting almost motionless at his workbench, she could see he had been sharpening a knife and cut himself, only instead of coming in to have it bandaged, he sat staring at it as it bled. "Did I cause that?" Mary asked, concerned. Kevin snapped out of his trance-like state, his eyes focusing on Mary as she approached him. He was surprised to see the cut on his hand, a small trail of blood trickling from the wound. It was as if he hadn't even registered the pain or the need to tend to it. "Oh, Mary," he muttered, his voice carrying a tinge of weariness. I didn't even notice." Worry etched across her face. Mary gently took Kevin's hand and examined the cut. It was a shallow gash, but it seemed to represent something deeper, a physical manifestation of the emotional turmoil that had engulfed him. "I think it's time we talked, Kevin," she said softly, her eyes searching his for any sign of recognition or understanding. "Something's not right, and I'm worried about you." Kevin's gaze dropped to the floor, his expression a mix of guilt and confusion. He knew deep down that something was off, that his behavior had changed, but he couldn't quite grasp why or how to fix it. Nightmare images of people having their heads removed and limbs severed constantly flashed through his thoughts, yet that wasn't anything he wanted to share. I don't know what's happening to me, Mary," he confessed, his voice filled with a hint of desperation. "Ever since that darkened spot showed up on my CT scan, everything feels different. I don't feel like myself anymore." Mary's heart sank, her concern deepening as she listened to Kevin's words. It was clear that his condition was affecting him in profound ways, and she knew they couldn't ignore it any longer. "We'll figure this out together, Kevin," she reassured him, gently squeezing his hand. "We won't give up until we find answers and get you the help you need." Kevin nodded, a mixture of fear and hope flickering in his eyes. With Mary by his side, he felt a glimmer of strength returning, a belief that they could face whatever lay ahead, no matter how uncertain or daunting. Together, they would navigate the mysteries that shrouded his changing behavior and uncover the truth that lurked within the shadows of their lives, though he still refused to speak of the nightmares or very real encounters with what seemed to be people from another realm. After having a long discussion regarding the dark spot on his CT scan and other changes, both went back into the house and worked together to cook an early dinner. Kevin and Mary had a pleasant dinner together, enjoying each other's company and savoring the flavors of their favorite dishes. Throughout the evening, however, Kevin's attention was constantly drawn to the invisible trail of cherry blossoms only he could see. It seemed to beckon him, urging him to follow its ethereal path and confront the man from the hospital who had abused his elderly mother. Despite his best efforts to focus on Mary and their time together, Kevin found it increasingly challenging to ignore the persistent pull of the cherry blossoms. They appeared everywhere they went, weaving through the yard and down the street, whispering promises of justice and retribution. Anger and determination welled up inside him, fueled by the horrific memories of what the man had done to her, memories transferred from his touch at the hospital. Unaware of Kevin's inner turmoil, Mary suggested they relax for the rest of the evening. She curled up on the couch, ready to enjoy a quiet moment together, while Kevin nodded and forced a smile. He knew he had to act, even if it meant keeping his intentions hidden from Mary. "I just remembered something I need to grab from my shop," Kevin said, his voice sounding a little distant. "I won't be long, I promise." Mary looked at him with concern, sensing something was amiss. "Is everything okay, Kevin?" He reached out and squeezed her hand gently. "Everything's fine, love. It's just a small task I forgot about. I'll be back before you know it." With those words, Kevin slipped out of the house, his steps filled with purpose. In his workshop, he retrieved the crimson katana, a symbol of his resolve, and felt the weight of responsibility settle upon his shoulders. The trail of cherry blossoms awaited him outside, shimmering in the moonlight, guiding him toward his mission. With determined steps, Kevin followed the invisible path, his heart pounding with a mix of fury and anticipation. Each step brought him closer to the man who had abused his own mother, the man who deserved to face the consequences of his actions. Through winding streets and deserted alleyways, Kevin pursued the trail of cherry blossoms, his senses heightened and his mind focused. The trail seemed to guide him effortlessly, as if it knew the depth of his determination. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the cherry blossoms led Kevin to a dimly lit street corner. There, standing in the shadows, was the man from the hospital, the perpetrator of his mother's pain. Rage surged through Kevin's veins, but he knew he had to remain composed to ensure justice was served. With a steady hand and a resolute gaze, Kevin confronted the man, his voice filled with quiet intensity. "You thought you could get away with what you did, but I won't let you harm anyone else. Move along, little man, before you are the one who gets hurt," the man said, stepping out from the shadow. Kevin reached down and drew the crimson-handled katana from its saya. Its presence alone carried a weight that resonated with both of them. As Kevin held the feather aloft, the cherry blossom surrounding him seemed to dance with anticipation. It was a moment of reckoning, a symbol of justice about to be served. Kevin's resolve and determination reached a crescendo as he became engulfed in swirling cherry blossoms with the katana held high. The swirling cherry blossoms surrounding him seemed to respond to his unwavering spirit, transforming the air around him into an aura of ancient power. In an instant, Kevin felt a surge of energy coursing through his veins, and his form began to change. His clothes rippled and transformed into traditional samurai armor, intricately adorned with symbols of justice and honor. A gleaming katana materialized in his hand, its blade reflecting the moonlight with a mesmerizing glow. The weight of centuries of samurai lineage settled upon Kevin's shoulders as he embraced his newfound identity. When everything dissipated, the man's eyes widened with recognition, a mix of fear and confusion evident on his face. Before he could utter a word, the frightening sight of the samurai confronted him. The man from the hospital stared in disbelief, his face pale with fear. He stumbled backward, unable to comprehend the sight before him. The transformation of Kevin into a formidable samurai, accompanied by the swirling cherry blossoms, was a sight that defied explanation. With a swift motion, Kevin raised his katana, ready to dispense the justice the man's mother deserved. The cherry blossoms swirled around him, their delicate petals forming a cyclone of fury, amplifying his strength and determination. "Your actions have consequences," Kevin's voice resonated with authority, his words carrying the weight of generations of warriors. "You will pay for the crime and pain you caused your mother." The man trembled, his voice filled with remorse. I didn't realize." But Kevin was resolute, his eyes fierce and unyielding. The samurai within him was fueled by a sense of duty, a commitment to protect the innocent and avenge the wronged. "That sword isn't going to do shit against—" The man was left speechless after a decisive strike from samurais. Katana swiftly disarmed the man as he attempted to pull a pistol from his waistband. Now he was defenseless and at the mercy of his judgment. "All crimes are punishable by death," the samurai stated. In the face of his adversary's vulnerability, Kevin's heart softened. The cherry blossoms, now gentle and serene, gently cascaded around him, reminding him of the ephemeral beauty of life. In that moment, he realized that true justice wasn't just about punishment, but also about compassion and the hope for redemption. By the time Kevin had finished the thought which couldn't have been longer than blinking, he was standing in a pool of blood and body parts as the cherry blossoms continued to swirl around him. Kevin's samurai form gradually dissipated, his armor fading away, leaving him standing as himself once more. The air grew still, and the weight of the moment settled upon him as everything around smelled of old copper pennies. Kevin stared at the headless body, seemingly unmoved by the thought he had just moments ago had. The man from the hospital remained on his knees, with his head laying on the ground alongside his body. Cracks began forming in the concrete as thin roots emerged from the headless man's kneecaps, making their way through to the earth below. Kevin just watched as the body of such a terrible person turned into such a beautiful cherry tree with full blooms. Not giving the situation a second thought, Kevin turned and with a final glance over his shoulder, Kevin began his journey back home, his heart lighter, knowing that justice had been served and a path towards redemption had started to grow. Kevin hurriedly made his way to the store, the memory of his encounter with the man from the hospital still fresh in his mind. He knew he needed to bring something home for Mary, something to ease the tension that had been building between them. As he entered the store, he quickly scanned the floral section, searching for the perfect bouquet. Selecting a vibrant assortment of roses and lilies, Kevin paid for them and left, clutching the bouquet tightly in his hand. He couldn't shake off the adrenaline that still coursed through his veins, but he knew that his actions had been driven by a desire to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Arriving home, he found Mary waiting for him, her expression a mix of worry and frustration. She crossed her arms, ready to voice her displeasure at his sudden departure earlier. Kevin took a deep breath, holding the bouquet behind his back. "I'm sorry, Mary," he began, his voice filled with sincerity. "I know I shouldn't have left like that without any explanation, but I went to the store to get these for you." With a flourish, he revealed the bouquet, the colorful flowers contrasting against the tension that had lingered in the air. Mary's anger softened, replaced by surprise and a glimmer of delight. Her eyes widened as she took in the sight of the beautiful blooms. A smile tugged at the corners of her lips, her frustration melting away. "Oh, Kevin," she whispered, her voice filled with affection. "They're gorgeous. Thank you." He reached out, gently placing the bouquet in her hands. Their fingers brushed, and in that moment, the lingering tension between them seemed to dissipate entirely. The love they shared was too strong to be overshadowed by a momentary disagreement. With a mixture of relief and gratitude, Mary stepped closer to Kevin, their bodies almost touching. Their eyes met, silently conveying the depth of their emotions. In that instant, any lingering resentment dissolved into a shared understanding of their unwavering bond. Passion ignited between them, fueled by the intense emotions that had swirled within their hearts. They embraced, their lips finding each other's, a tender and fervent connection that expressed their love and desire. Time seemed to stand still as they lost themselves in the intimacy of the moment, their bodies and souls entwined. In the warmth of their embrace, Kevin and Mary found solace and reassurance. The turbulent events of the day had led them to this moment of vulnerability and reconnection. As they surrendered to their passion, they rediscovered the strength that resided within their love, knowing that together they could weather any storm that came their way. And so, in the embrace of their shared love, they found healing, forgiveness, and a renewed commitment to cherish each other, not just in moments of passion, but throughout the ebb and flow of their lives together. As their bodies entwined, they felt a sense of renewal and unity. Their physical connection was a reflection of the deep emotional bond they shared during every touch, every kiss, and each was infused with a profound sense of connection. They reveled in the intimacy they had been missing, grateful for this opportunity to reaffirm their love. In the aftermath of their lovemaking, Kevin and Mary lay entwined, their bodies bathed in a gentle glow. They gazed into each other's eyes, their hearts filled with love and commitment. They knew challenges lay ahead, but their shared experience had reminded them of their resilience and the power of their connection.